Similarly, an example, it can be done on mass media as well. So what do you think the most frequently used subject for The Simpsons? Yeah, so they've had God knows how many episodes. They've had about 30 or so of their episodes are entirely about climate change. That was the fundamental subject. If you saw the film they did, The Simpsons, the subject was environmental problems. So it can be done. It can be jolly funny. And it attracts a different type of audience in a different kind of way. So don't assume that it has to be done in a standard way. Thank you very much. The other ones here, making it part of normal business is the key to this, I think. And we've heard this already from Will. If you don't have the correct measures in your organisation, then you're really going to go nowhere. So for us, for example, our reduction measures that you saw earlier, they are on our corporate scorecard. So our directors review how we're doing against them every quarter, and it's there along with finances and health and safety and the environmental things we're trying to do and all the business issues that we have to address. And those measures, of course, cascade down the organisation. So you've got to make it part of normal business. People's objectives we've heard about as well, and people's jobs, yeah, that's all part of it as well. And we have that. We have down, you can see there, all our offices, down to quite a low level, they have their own targets as well. Not always, we don't force that upon people. That's just how the organisation has worked. I mentioned voltage optimization, which is a bit of kit that we've used, and you're going to hear more about that from Angus from Power Perfector. To get behavioural change, sometimes you need to also use kit. So we've spent some money on buying stuff and voltage optimization. It's a box you'll hear about that saves power in a little bit. You'll hear more. What we found, and also with this wind turbine, this is just a small one that was installed at one of our depots. We did a survey on one or two of these we've installed. We checked how many people 2 weeks beforehand had turned their monitors off that night, and it was something like 40% had left them on as they left to go home for the night. We installed this thing, didn't make a song and dance about it particularly, and we did the same survey for the following 2 weeks, and pretty much every monitor was off. We hadn't asked them to do that any differently. It was just something about it being on there and being on their minds had an impact. So buying kit can have a direct and an indirect impact as well, and people are proud of these things when they're installed in their offices as well. We have a carbon reduction fund, we call it, an odd way of approaching offsetting. We don't really, I'm sure there's lots of you do agree with carbon offsetting. We don't do it ourselves. What we do instead is we take the money that we would have put into carbon offsetting and paying some company to plant trees in Guatemala or something. We keep that money ourselves, I look after it, and I allocate it out to groups of people around the organisation that want to do schemes and projects and install new kit to try it for their offices. And the staff there, they ask me for the money, we give them the money, and they run the project and they install it. That turbine there was installed like that. Some guys in that office said they wanted one. They convinced us, we gave them the money, and they got it working. And that's a great way to get more people involved. So I'd implore you, if you can put aside that little bit of money for spending like that. The second to bottom one there, lots of companies like yourselves, I'm sure, have employed professional consultancies to come in and advise you how to reduce your footprints. And again, that's great, and they serve their purpose, of course. We did that a while ago, and that was useful. Getting the local electrician in, and we've done this in quite a few of our places now, is you get the local Sparky and get them just walk around your buildings. And they'll suggest all sorts of freaky things you never really considered. The first one we got in, he went round and he saw the vending machines were on 24 hours a day. And said, well, just put a timer thing on. You get them for £2 from B&Q. Put them on and they'll turn off for 12 hours a day. So that saved quite a bit. And he changed the lights. And he does stuff as he walks around. He'll tweak stuff and turn things and do things. And you can give him a little bit of money his way as well, which is great. So it's cheap. And it gets people involved and he talks to people. But I'd thoroughly recommend it. It works a treat. It feels more honest somehow to have the Sparky going around and having consultants always. And then the bottom one, this is from my background of running call centres actually, is, and you probably know this already, but if you want to make change in a department and find I can't put it delicately, the gobby one. I used to, if you wanted to change a call centre to make the performance better, we'll find the person that's most influential, often not the most popular, it's true, but they're the one that has influence over that group, who's not the manager, and get them to write on a whiteboard what the performance is for the next half an hour, or for the previous half an hour. And just in them doing it and talking and being the loudmouth, they get people engaged. So I tend to track these people down when I go around and I make most of them and get them to encourage other people to do stuff and to write down what the performance is and to come up with ideas. And they have a disproportionate level of impact there. And I also use them when they argue with me, when I put things out that people disagree with, I'll run ideas past these people first. Because it's nice to get their ideas, because often they're very vocal, and of course people can be very vocal on email very easily, of course. If you ring them up, you get a much better discussion going. And I refer things to them, they're very influential. Starter, this is another thing that I think we've got to remember on behavioural change. So before I get into that, I suppose, do you remember star charts? I brought mine. Here we go. This is what I use for my kids. Do you recognise these? Yeah. So what you do, this is, I mean, behavioural change is just child psychology. I mean, it's nothing complicated. I never studied that, but it's blooming obvious to me. So why do these things work? Right, it's because it's stuck on the bedroom door. Yeah, they see it all the time. If they do something good, they get a star. And daddy comes up or mummy comes up and we stick a star on and we talk about it and it's nice. And if you get 10 stars, you have won Mr. Nosy. It's nice. And if you don't do well, you lose a star and we all cry, but we learn about it and, you know, it's direct and it's obvious. So we've done it for years. All parents have done it for donkey's years. And businesses are no different, really. So this is my equivalent of a star chart now. So we have this for our main measures. So you can see there are all our regions down the side, you can probably see. And what they started is 3 years ago, I guess, everyone was at 0. So everyone was, the bars were nowhere. And the blue line there is for our business mileage. They've got to get to 25% reduction. That's the target that was agreed. And they're all getting there. Yeah. So some of them have done it already, you know, and they can share their good practice and they have discussions about it. And there's an element of competition, of course, that comes into it. But everyone wants to achieve. So it's about putting information in a way which is motivating people to get somewhere rather than berating them for having not got there. Let's give them a reward for getting there. Poor old Wales is suffering, isn't it? But hey, there you go. So this is child psychology. We're all children, really. So approach behavioural change, how you tell a child. If you want a child not to run across the road, what you don't say is, don't run across the road, you'll get squashed by a car. Yeah? Psychologists have been telling us for years, you've got to say, stay on the pavement, it's very safe. And then what's stuck in their mind? Oh, pavement safe, rather than car and squash. So it's the same in this kind of arena as well. Say what you want people to do, not what you want them to not do. Hard. We've done quite well. We won this award. This is a particularly nice one because they come and audit you to death. And we're very pleased. This implies that our staff were engaged. And as I said earlier, our staff, if I'm honest, are quite en masse difficult because they're extremely intelligent. I think our average number of PhDs is enormous compared to other organisations in the environmental sector. So I'm really pleased that we managed to get this particular one. Moving on. Yeah. So doing it, it's dead easy to get animals and monkeys and dogs to turn off the light bulb. You just use chocolate. There's an idea. We should do that one at work. It's easy for some. I can't get my kids to turn the lights off, and my wife don't turn the lights off. So it's very hard. We shouldn't forget that. So you've got to think about it rather differently. So, you know, even showing this kind of picture, you know, helps people to realise it shouldn't be that hard. You've got to get into the habit. One way that we've done it is get our senior directors involved. These are all the senior directors of the Environment Agency outside going through the bins. So we dragged them out of their meeting one day and we got them to go through the bin in your office that says landfill on it. I'm sure you got one. Generally next to the recycling ones. And in every company I've ever been to, pretty much, there's about 60% of the stuff in there is in the wrong bin. And ours is no different. So these guys went through it. What you can't see is a whole army of people watching them and hooting as they went through. And I mean, their departments were bad. You know, ironically, the waste department was the worst, and genuinely true. They're about 75% of stuff in. I mean, really, there was newspapers in there. I mean, it's pathetic, really, but it was bad. So getting these guys involved just gives the message that we do it seriously, and they then go back and you catch these guys every now and again going through the bins, which is the kind of behaviour you want people to see happening, and they want it to, of course, be better. We're doing some renewable stuff generally. This is, in case you can't work this one out, this is a field with a shadow of a big, huge wind turbine and the little children with the windmills. There's a child theme here, isn't there? And yeah, we're doing some of this. We own a lot of land, so we're trying to develop wind turbines on our floodplains. Again, they're not popular. Within our own company, they're not entirely popular. And developing on a floodplain, we try to stop that happening, and we're trying to do it ourselves. So, you know, this is a tricky one for us. We wanted to be bold and go for it. Curiously, a useful part of this exercise was more about when we went public and announced this in the newspapers and at our conference that we were doing this. That got more reaction internally than all the internal comms I'd done. So that was one way actually getting in The Guardian was very helpful, because then I got a lot more engagement questions, involvement from our own staff because of that. So it's kind of making the most of the external publicity as well. So in summary, I've kind of wobbled on there about all sorts of things. My main messages, I suppose, are in your organisations, and it's starting to happen now, it's that time for debate and inaction and trying to make the perfect decisions all the time. That's all over now. I think that's done. And our experience is you can have those debates and you can entertain them forever. But if my experience from 15 years in private sector taught me anything was, you know, you have to make a decision and you have to boldly do it. And you have to sometimes accept that people are going to either dislike you or the decision. Well, you know what? that's just fine. And then the other thing is this second point here, which is don't go for the lists. If you've written loads of lists today of stuff that you're going to go back and do, that's great. Well, just pick 5 of them and do them. Yeah, and let everybody in your company know that you're doing 5 things, and then do them. And if one of them doesn't work, that's fine. Fill it with something else, and then do 5 more. And then after that, do 5 more. Don't try and do everything all at once, because you'll cripple yourselves, would be my experience. And other than that, I'm done with a minute to spare. How about that?